Hi there, welcome back to another animation tutorial on how to animate in TVpaint. My name is Shalon and I'm from P2 Studios. Today we're going to be working on how to create backgrounds using some of the tools that are available in TVpaint. And backgrounds are very important within your animation project, and it's good to know how to create them with a better and faster workflow. So to begin with, we're going to be drawing the side of a building and with some grass, and it's just a simplistic background just to show you exactly how easy it is to create backgrounds within this program. So we're going to go ahead and zoom in a little bit on our stage. And first of all, we're going to need to have two layers down here in our timeline. The first layer is for our building, and our second layer is going to be for our grass in the foreground. And this way we can, maybe use parallax, which is moving two images slightly out of phase, so that way it looks like it has depth, which is used frequently in animation projects. So first of all, we're going to go ahead and create that new layer. I'm just going to name it grass. And this grass is going to be above the current layer because you want it in front of the building that we are going to be placing up in our scene. And we just go ahead and say above current layer. And so this layer that's underneath the grass layer, we're going to go ahead and name this building. So now that we have our two layers here, we're going to go ahead and make sure our building layer is selected. This can be shown by the yellow outline. All you have to do is click on the thumbnail sketch here. And both of these are set to hold. We could just set them to none. That way, this is the only frame that we're working on. You can always extend them if need be. So the first thing we're going to need to do is learn how to use the tool Papers. Papers is this little button here that's next to our Draw Select tools that we use. We also have the eyedropper tool, which helps us select colors from whatever is either in our scene, or we can select it anywhere on the stage. So we go ahead and select this, and you can see that it's selected by the yellow outline. Now to select various different papers, all we have to do is hover over it and right click on our mouse. And when we do that, it pops up with an option menu. Now this option menu has a lot of different types of papers that can be used in this program. And generally what Papers is just a texture fill that simulates the textures of different objects or different surfaces, such as papers that we have cements, like you would find on sidewalks or on roads. We also have different fractal textures, which can simulate either like stone, or it can be used for clouds. There's a lot of different uses for those. And we also have metal plates, which you use on side of machines or vehicles. We have different type of noise. These are also good for rock. And we have different types of paper textures that we can use for different, if we want to use like a parchment paper in our background we need for our animation scene. And we also have some that look like leather. And so the textures there's a lot of different options and different ways you can use these textures. Since, for instance, we have rock and we have rock beach. And at the bottom we're going to be using one that's called the wall. And they have wall wood. And something also I'm going to show you is that you can use more than one texture on your image in order to create a more realistic texture. So the hardness here is how basically the opacity of the texture that you're going to be applying to your scene. The size is 100%. You can make this bigger or smaller depending on the size of the texture you want. It will increase the size. I'll show you that. And so I'm going to go ahead and create a flood fill. We're going to be using the flood fill for the papers, and I'm going to go ahead and select the wall. Now most walls, for instance here, are either stone or they're using brick. So we're going to use a brick one in this instance. I'm just going to go ahead and close this out. You can also minimize it by using this down arrow here, and you can put it off to the side until you need to use it. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this, and as you can see, it came up with a blue brick wall. And our brick walls are usually, most of the time, unless they're painted, they're usually a brown color. So I'm going to go ahead and undo that and select down here in my picker menu, or you can use any type of color mixer or the slider or your bin, whatever you're comfortable in using as your color selector. I just use the picker bin, and I'm just going to go ahead and go up here and select the color until I get like a dark brown or a medium brown. So I'm going to go ahead again and make sure that my flood fill is selected and that my papers is selected, and also I'm on the right layer. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this, and as you can see, it created a nice brown, light brown brick building. Now, as I showed you earlier, if you go back to your paper pop-up menu, right here where it says size, you can increase this and it will create a bigger texture on your object. So I'm going to go ahead and increase the size to 200 to show you how this works. And we're going to minimize this again. And I'm going to go ahead and delete this. You can do it two ways. You can undo it here, or you can take the select button and you can select the whole screen, and you just push this little clear selection button right here, and that will clear everything. And then all you do is go back to your selection menu and you just push clear selection. So I'm going to go ahead and select the fill once again and make sure the paper is selected and I'm on the right layer. And I'm going to go ahead and create a bigger texture using that 200%. Now, as you can see, the building is, the side of the texture for the building is much larger, which is pretty good. It all depends on how far from the camera your building is going to be, or the perspective that your building is going to be in. For this purpose, we're just going to go ahead and use this. It's going to be for like a medium to a close-up shot. So we're just going to go ahead and use this texture. Now we want to see the corner of a building. The corner of the building will be right about almost midline of our stage here, and then we're going to create another texture going this direction so that it can look like that we're on a corner of a building. And then we're going to lay down some grass on the bottom like it's on the edge, and I'll be showing you how to do that in a minute. So the first thing we do is we go up here to our transform tool. We select our transform tool and we go to warp. Now warp will allow us to create a perspective for our wall. So all we have to do is drag this down. As you can see, it's changing the perspective, and we drag this one up. And just make sure that these are lined up. And what also I'd like to show you is I'm going to extend this one so that it looks like the wall continues on. Now we said that the midline of our corner of our building is going to be somewhere in the middle here. So I'm going to drag this handle and drag it all the way up to here until we get to about the middle of the window. And then all you have to do is drag these up so they go off screen. And we drag this one down a little bit. So as you can see, this is going to be the corner of our building. So all you have to do is scroll down over here on your panel bin here and hit apply, and that will apply that to our scene right there. And now we need to make the other side of this building. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and select the select tool again. And I'm just going to go ahead and select, I'm going to overlap just a little bit, as you can see right here along this edge. Just overlap a tiny bit to make sure that those edges butt up against each other. So we have selected this rectangle. We can go back up to our flood tool. And for this, I'm going to imagine that the sun is coming from this direction, hitting the wall. So this wall is going to be darker because it's away from the sun. So all we have to do is select a darker color and then make sure that our flood fill and our paper is enabled and that our layer that we're going to be putting on is selected as well. And we go ahead and click on that on the selection and we created another wall. Now we go back to the select tool and we push clear selection, and this will take our selection off. And as you can see, it's not quite lined up with this edge of the building. To do that, it's fairly simple. We just go back and hit back, and that will reselect our edges here. And we can take and use the transform tool, and we can just pull those up a little bit so that the edges meet and they look a little bit more on target. So I got that one, and then we just pull this one down just a bit. And now that we have it lined up with the edge, we can go ahead again, scroll down in our panel bin here and say apply on current layer. So now that it's applied, we can go ahead and select that select button again and clear selection. Whatever you do when you have this selected, do not hit this clear selection here, because if we do, instead of using the select button, this is what happens. It erases our project, whatever's selected. So we're just going to go under the selection and push clear selection. And so as you can see, we have a really nice dark wall away from the light, and we have a really nice wall that's in perspective. Now we're going to go ahead and add some grass to our wall here, and you can just go ahead and select this first layer, which is our grass, and we're going to use a tool that we generally don't that I consider a really cool, fun tool. Over here in our paint menu, we have what we call funny tools. In our funny tools, there's quite a different number of type of tools you can use. And this, for instance, you can have fire, you can have smoke, you can do clouds, you can do leaves, trees. We're going to be using this one as the grass. And there's also a number of other different type of funny tools you can use. These are basically preset templates for different brushes. So I'm going to go ahead and select the grass, and as you can see, the grass tool, when we select it, already selects our color for us. We can lighten this or darken this by just clicking on our color picker here. But it all depends. Like, for instance, we're going to go for here on this side of the building, it's going to be lighter grass because the light is coming from this direction. So we're just going to go ahead and lay some grass down along the building's edge here, and we can just cover this up, this white area, with grass, and by just holding down, either if you're using a mouse or you can use a pen. And you can also use put another layer under here for like a dark layer, just a mask layer for dirt, so that your under layer here will be dark, so it gives it more of a realistic effect. So we're just going to go right up to this building's edge here, and then when we get to the building's edge, we're going to go ahead and stop, and we're going to put some darker grass on this side because the sun is away from that side of the building. So I'm going to select that dark green and start at this edge. And it's still pretty light, so we can go ahead and take and darken that further. And that's a little bit better. And as you can see, the brush has a jitter effect on it, which allows a randomness when placing the blades of grass. It also has a randomness of color. And so now that we have our building here and our grass, you can always put, you could put a roof or an edge on this building. We can go to our select tool and we go to up to our rectangle. And we can hopefully make sure you select the building itself. And we can draw, it's going to be about halfway here. So just make sure when you're doing this that you're, actually we're going to do this on a separate layer because I want to make sure it's not going to affect our building layer. So I'm going to push clear selection. And we're just going to go down to make sure our building layer is selected. We go to new, and then we're just going to type in roof. And we want to make sure that this is above our current layer, which is our building. And we just push OK. Now that we got the roof, all we have to do is go ahead again and select. And our roof is going to be an overlap, and it's just an edge. So we're just going to go ahead and make a selection. And we're going to color this roof kind of like, I don't know, dark brown to black. And then we just use our flood tool again. Make sure that your papers is not on, so that way you're not filling it with a texture. But if you want to, you can. We can go to our paper and we can select, for instance, for the roof, we can select some kind of cement. So we can go ahead and select that. And we can just flood fill that into there. And as you can see, it's not quite dark, but we're going to go ahead and transform this as well. And first of all, we're going to rotate this up and make sure it goes to the corner of our building. And we're going to pull this down. And then when we get it in position, all we have to do is push apply down here in the bottom of our menu. And we applied it to our building. And then to look at it, we just go ahead and clear selection. As you can see, we have a nice edge on the roof of our building, or it could be a wall. And then if you want to even go one step further, you can go ahead and apply a background, such as a sky. And to do that, we can just go to and create a new layer. And you want to keep all these on separate layers, so that way if you need to adjust them layer, adjust a layer later, you can go ahead and do that. So in the position, I'm just going to go under current layer, and I'm going to name it sky, and I just push OK. And so for my sky, I'm just going to go ahead and create a gradient. And to do that, all we need to do is push our flood fill tool again. Make sure our paper is off, and then we can go down here to the bottom of our menu for our bin and hit gradient. Now the gradient right now is set just to black. We just click on the gradient and we can do like an A to B pen, and there's a lot of different types of options you can do. We can also just do sky. So we're just going to go ahead and apply that to this layer. And as you can see, there is like a little star that pops up with a question mark. What this is flood filling the whole entire layer, the back layer, with the sky, but it wants to know which the direction of the sun is going. So if we say, okay, since this wall is being hit with the sun, we want to say, well, the sun is coming from that direction. So we can go ahead and point to that direction, to that wall, and hit apply. Now, as you can see, this applied to our whole image here. And this is because the in-between cracks of the wall is not filled in. It has a blank opacity or a zero opacity, and you can fix this simply by going to your wall menu, your building here, and what we could do is we could take and create a mask for that building and for the top of the edge of this here. And all we have to do to do that is we go up here to our select menu again, and we can go to our freehand, and I'm just going to hold down the shift key when I click so that when I'm selecting, I can select straight lines. Oops, I'm going to do that selection. The best way we could try is using a B-spline. Let's try the B-spline. So we go ahead and select that. We're going to select it all the way around. And we're going to push close spline. So we're going to select this spline. See if we can get the handles on it. Let's see. Well, we're just going to go ahead and delete this instead of applying it. Let's see, we're just going to go ahead and select a freehand. Now, the freehand selector we're going to use is best to be used with a pen. So I'm going to go ahead and draw this around the building. It doesn't need to be exact, it can be rough. Just like that. And just make sure you're drawing around the whole frame when you do this so that it applies to whatever area you want it to apply to. And so I selected that, so now we have the whole area here. And again, like I said, it doesn't have to be exact. And then we're just going to go ahead and create a new layer, and we're going to call this mask layer for the underneath our current layer. I push OK, and now I just flood fill with a darker color, like you could use black or dark brown, and we go ahead and make sure our papers is not selected, and we select that the mask layer is underneath our wall. So I go ahead, and as you can see, it helps solidify the lines in between, and again we have to pick the direction of our sun. Oh, I deselected that. See our flood fill. Oh, I gotta unselect gradient. So I unselected gradient so that way only we're using this color. And as you can see, it helped darken our background here. But I kind of don't like the edge on the building here to be selected. So we're just gonna go ahead and undo that. And we're gonna go ahead and draw a selection around just the brick itself. So I'm gonna go back to the freehand selection. First, we're going to clear the other selection that we already had selected, and we're just going to select it without the roof of the building. So I'm just going to go ahead and draw a selection mark around our building here. Again, it doesn't have to be too exact. And then we're just going to go ahead and make sure that mask layer is selected, and we're back on flood fill. And now that we have our flood fill selected, you can see it solidified the white background. And like I said before, you can use the for under the grass to make the dirt or the ground look more realistic. And so all we have to do is go up here and select our selection tool and clear selection. So as you can see now, we have our wall is going to be a really nice gradient we have really a nice opaque mask for our backdrop. And now we can lay down our sky. So we're going to select our sky layer, and we're going to select gradient back again. So that way it brings our sky gradient back. And it doesn't matter what picker color our picker is at, because this overrides when we select it. It overrides what we're going to use for the flood fill. So we make sure the flood fill is selected, make sure our papers is not selected, and that our sky layer is selected, so we're only affecting that layer. So we go ahead and click on it. As you can see, it won't allow me to apply it because right now the background is not visible. So we go ahead and make that visible, and as you can see, it has applied the sky to our layer. Now you can see the edge of our building is currently has some texture issues to it. So all we have to do to take care of that is we can unselect this again, and then we can take and draw just in this triangle by going to our selection tool again, going to Freehand. And I only recommend this if you have a tablet or some kind of digital drawing tablet that you can use for your program. And then we're just going to select this area, and we're going to fill this area only in with the background. So to do that, we're going to I'm going to have to clear this background, and we have it's easy as just deleting the layer and then confirm it, and then we could just add a new layer below it, and you can see this is still selected, which is good. And we create sky, and then make sure it's under our current layer, and then we just again select the flood fill, and then make sure whatever direction our sun is coming from. So we go ahead and select that, and now that we have a really nice background, we could also apply clouds to this. If you want to use more of your funny tools over here, then we have a cloud brush, and the cloud brush is pretty cool. It creates clouds in the background. You can use you can also choose different colors for your clouds, depending on the mood or depending on what time of day. So we'll go ahead and deselect this by going to our select menu again and push clear selection. And whatever you do, don't select this button here. If you don't have the select on, it'll clear whatever is in that selection. So as you can see here, we have a really nice corner edge of either a wall or a building, and we have nice grass in the foreground, and we have a simplistic background. Now you can make this more detailed as much as you want. It all depends upon the project. Like if you want some graffiti on your wall, you just go over here to your funny tools again and just select the words, and you could put like make sure your color is white. We can select wherever we want on the screen, and you just select you just use this to select what color typeface you want for like graffiti on your wall, and make sure your brush is selected. And as you can see, there's different types of options for this. We have different fonts. TVpaint comes with a ton of fonts you can use to create text within this program. And also you can add more fonts if you like, if you don't see a font here you like. But as you can see, there's tons of fonts to be used with this program, which is really an awesome option. And so we're going to go ahead and just leave Arial selected. You just select off screen in order to minimize that. And you can have different scripts depending on whichever part of the world or stylistic approach you want for your scene. And then we have the style is either italic, bold italic, which is slanted, or bold or regular. And then you have direction, left to right or top to bottom. and then you can do letters or just do whole words. Now, to do this, we're just gonna we need to make sure that the wall is selected so that we're only painting on the wall. So we go down here into our building layer and we select that, and you can just write on it. As you can see, the graffiti is a little small, so we're going to go ahead and increase the size. So I'm going to increase the size to let's say 300. And you can see that now that when I click on it, it lays down what they call a jitter. See, the jitter is putting down like different directions and different angles on which it applies the graffiti or the letters, texture letters. So I'm just gonna go ahead and deselect those all, and I'm just gonna hit white again. And in here it says TVpaint, which is pretty cool. But if you want different letters, all you have to do is see this box right here in our options after we select our letters. In this box, we have the ability to type whatever we want. And we can type, we can type Go Raiders, which is a football team here in the United States. And so we could put that on our wall, and it adds like a little special touch. And then we can use other tools to put whatever you feel like the project needs. So that's just an example of what we can use to create a simplistic backdrop for our animations really quickly. It can be more detailed or it can be less detailed depending on the demands of your project. But I recommend, like everything else, play with it. Use it a lot so you can get a feel of how to use these tools more effectively. So until our next video, keep practicing and keep animating. Thank you.